Our speaker tonight is the gentleman, Mr. William Perry. Mr. Perry was a member of the famed Buffalo Soldiers of the 92nd Infantry Division, who fought as a highly decorated infantry force in Italy. Mr. Perry went on to become a consultant in Spike Lee's movie, if you saw it, The Miracle of St. Anna. There's a great deal he has to share with us about a subject or about a particular area of the war, which I am woefully ignorant of. I look forward very much to hearing Mr. Perry talk, so I'd like to welcome Mr. Perry.
I don't have a speech to give you, but I'll just have some dialogue. And if you want to ask a question, just hop in and ask. You know, we can do it that way. I think it'd be easier. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio on the 12th of August, 1924. I am the third son of Samuel V. and Willette Augusta Perry. I was born in a house. My grandfather owned a house, and I lived the first 14 years of my life there. He was a butler and a coachman. He worked for a fellow named Joshua Wade. Joshua Wade probably was a forerunner of the cell phone. He owned Western Union. I see some people here might remember that. Little guy on that brown suit, he'd get on a bicycle when you got a telegram, he'd ride around in Liberty House. I spent the first 14 years of my life in that house. And I went to school in Cleveland. I graduated Cleveland Central High School. It's reputed to be the oldest high school west of the Allegheny Mountains. That's where John D. Rockefeller went to school. And also General Benjamin Davis went to school there. I graduated high school in June 1942. I was 17 years old at the time. And the war was on. It was not particularly easy to get a job coming out. You'd think it was. I decided I wanted to go in the Army. I had a brother who had already gone in. He was in we had a battalion of the National Guard, Ohio National Guard here. Some of you might know, the 372nd, 2nd Ohio Battalion. The Army was different then than it is now. We had two armies then. We had a white army and a black army. It was segregated. And the twains never met. It wasn't always a pleasant thing for us, but you had to endure, and you had to put up a lot of indignities and other things. My father, of course, and he had served in the First World War. And I told him I wanted to go in, so he reluctantly agreed after a time. I guess it was time to let go. So when I became 18 in August, and I was inducted, I had to volunteer through the draft. And I was inducted in the Army 27th November 1942. And I was sent to Camp Perry, Ohio, up near Sandusky. And I always wondered why they named this camp Camp Perry. I had never been in the Army. Why did they name a camp after me? I found out later on the real reason for that. But that's, at Camp Perry, I arrived there 27th November and began to find out a lot of things I didn't like about the Army. We were restricted to the barracks. We couldn't leave there because you were going to be shipped out. They didn't know any minute or any day. But they had German prisoners there at the time. And some of you might have heard about this. The German prisoners had to run in the camp. They could go anywhere, and they told us these guys didn't go down to Sandusky. And socialize, yeah. But we couldn't even leave the barracks. So it came that Sunday evening, they put us on a train, they shipped us out. And I woke up that morning on the train and stopped at a crossing, and I saw a bus standing there that said Rome on there. I said, oh, no, it can't be in Italy. And here we were in Rome, Georgia. They crossed the line from Fort McClellan, Alabama. Alabama at that time didn't have a very friendly attitude. This country had segregation laws. At that time in the history of this country, they had a big case down there, the Scottsboro boys. I don't know if you ever heard of that. There were 9 black boys were accused of raping 2 white girls in a boxcar at that time. The thing kicked on, went through the courts for years, up until World War II, and the guys were never convicted. One of the girls reputed the thing. She said nothing ever happened to the thing. That was the nature of Alabama in 1930. I was stationed at Fort McClellan. I was sent to the 600th Field Artillery. I took my basic training with them. And I came out of basic training, I was made a corporal. First thing, you begin to find out some things you didn't like about the Army. You didn't like about Alabama in particular. I went into town in Alabama once, in the town Anderson. And they had very stringent Jim Crow laws. You might not be aware of them. But you could get yourself in a lot of trouble because the police would enforce them. And I find it difficult to understand how we're here defending the laws of the country, but there you almost feel like a prisoner in the camp. So I found it best just to stay on the post. Don't venture off into the town. We stayed in Fort McClellan about 3 months. And when the 92nd was being formed in October of '42, around Columbus's birthday, they formed a unit in 4 different camps. There's a good reason for that, I'll tell you. The 360, you have 3 infantry regiments in a division. A division has 15,000 men in it. The 365th was one of the regiments. It was formed at Camp Atterbury, Indiana. The 370th was formed at Camp Breckenridge, Kentucky. And the 371st was formed at Camp Robinson, Arkansas. And division artillery and the special units, engineers and other units, were formed at Fort McClellan, Alabama. There had been another black division formed before, the 93rd, which had been stationed in Huachuca. Huachuca is a fort in Arizona about 60 miles north of the border, Mexican border. And it had been, historically, they had served black troops there because they didn't interfere with the social order of the day. The 25th, there were 4 black regiments been stationed since the Civil War. The 24th Infantry, 25th, the 9th and 10th Cavalry. They were called the Buffalo Soldiers. Said the Indians named them that because of their matty hair and their skin color. They formed a division there right after war, right after Pearl Harbor, the 93rd Division. They had an insignia, a French helmet. The reason they wore that French helmet, because in World War I, they had served with the French. The American Army gave them to the French to fight with, the 2 black divisions. They didn't fight with the American Army. They wore French uniforms, used French equipment. So they had this for the helmet. They were stationed in Huachuca. At that time in the history of this country, we're fighting for our lives. No congressional delegation in the United States would allow 15,000 armed Negroes training for war to be served, to be trained in their state. That's a historical fact. You could not train any other state other than Huachuca, which in Arizona, which was sparsely populated. And therefore, you had no really contact with civilians. The 93rd went on some maneuvers in Louisiana in '44. So when they went to maneuvers, that opened up Huachuca. So the 92nd, we could be assembled as 1 unit there. So we arrived at Huachuca. And one thing we found the first day there, if you got a pass or some leave, you could not visit any town in Arizona. If you got a pass, you had to go to Mexico. We're defending democracy and everything, but you could not socialize with the people. They didn't want that. So we stayed there in Huachuca for a year training. And then when we didn't really know what was happening to it. There was a mood in that we were never going to fight. This was just a charade we were going through so that they could get you out of civilian life. In June, we were alerted for a combat zone. Now, when the 93rd came back from maneuvers, they shipped them down to Death Valley in California because they had no theater commander wanting them. They didn't want to get mixed up in dealing with Negro troops. So when we got word we were going to go into combat, but only 1 regiment would go. That was 370th. That was my regiment. To see how we would do. See, we had officers black horse up to first lieutenant. None above the rank at that time. And they would never put a unit where a black officer outranked a white officer. This was a no-no in the Army. So we trained, and finally they shipped us out. We came back maneuvers. Equipped us, got new equipment and fillers, and they kicked some guys out. They weren't fit. And we shipped off. It took us about 3 days to get from Huachuca to Camp Patrick in Virginia, where we was the port of embarkation. That was in June of 1944. So in June we left there, I believe it was June 15th. We left there on the, well, first we had difficulties, situations, a lot of places we went. We had some problems there at the port of embarkation. We had a situation where there was a mix-up in some chains some soldiers got. And they wanted you to don't put your change in the girl's hands, the clerks. They wanted you to put it on the counter. And the chains got mixed up and got in a little argument, so they called one of the officers and he tried to straighten it out, but he couldn't straighten it out. So they felt, the MPs, they called them and they said, well, we'll close the place. Well, they said, okay, then you go ahead and close it. And it looked like somebody just vacuumed the people out of the place. So when the MPs came out, our guys had gone across the road and assembled their rifles and machine guns and got them. We were one at those days, most black units weren't armed when they went to Port of Embarkation. They were quartermaster or engineer labor battalions. We were armed. We were only about the second black outfit that went through there armed. And it could have been an unhappy situation, but they called the colonel and he came down and he straightened things out. But for another 2 weeks we stayed there, they detailed people out of each company to act as MPs in our area, and we didn't have any more difficulties. And we got commended for our conduct by the city of Richmond, Virginia, and everybody else around there. We left Newport News on the United States ship Mariposa. It was a luxury liner. It had been the Madison's line flagship before the war. And I guess we must have had about 10 or 12,000 people on that boat. Our whole combat team was on there, which came to about 5,000 or 6,000 men. And they put you on there and you're stacked 4 deep of these hammocks. And you're hanging down, the guys hanging down in your face. You only eat 2 meals a day on the boat, and you eat standing up. Boat rocks, you better hang on to your tray, because the boat will rock, and you grab that tray, and it's got a long thing, you just stand up. It took us 7 days to go through Gibraltar and Oran. This boat, we didn't have any convoy or anything. This boat was out there by itself, and that boat looked like it'd leap out of the water at night. And they said that boat was so fast, they didn't worry about submarines because they could outrun them. And I believe that now, but you got a little nervous then. We pulled in Oran, and we stayed there 2 weeks, had some parades and things, and then one night they put us in different naval transports and took us up. We didn't know where we were going all this time. First we thought we were going to southern France, because right after Normandy, they invaded southern France, and for about 3 days all you saw was airplanes in the sky flying over from North Africa to southern France. So they put us on these boats one night, and we came up to Naples about 2 o'clock in the morning. And the Germans had sabotaged boats all in the harbor. And we had built rams and things across, and we got off and went there, and Naples had been pretty well bombed. A lot of wreckage around there, and people sleeping in hallways and things. So we got off and fell in and went up to a place called Bagnoli. It's been an old volcano crater, and it had been used for the king's hunting ground in Italy. So we get staged there, and we begin to prepare ourselves to go up into combat. So a few days later, they took us up to a place called Civita Vici. Italy was a mixture of everything. You had Brazilian troops there, you had Japanese troops. The 100 Battalion, which became the 442nd Combat Team, served in Italy. They had been removed out of their families, had just been moved in California, A lot of them had been sent to concentration camps up in Mindanao and Nevada and places. But they were there too. They fought with us. And the 23rd of August, 1944, about 8:30, they took us up to the Arnold River, a little town called Ponadero, about 15 miles east of Pisa. The first time I saw it. You know, when you're walking through history, you don't think about the importance of these things to you or anybody else. You see the Leaning Tower over there. And I'd read about that in school, and here it was. But one thing, you could not fire at that tower. You couldn't shoot at it. The Germans were using it for observation points. But if you fired that tower, you'd get court-martial. Nothing in Rome was ever bombed, all those artifacts. They couldn't bomb them, and they didn't bomb the Leaning Tower, Pisa, none of those ancient Italian things. So when we first came to Italy, General Clark, he was the commander of the Fifth Army. He told us he was glad to have us, and he was going to put us in a little soft sector and let us get a little experience, and he would hurl us at the Bosch. And he asked our colonel, did he have any problems? He said, well, had one of his company commanders, his Negro company commander, has been commanding the company for 16 months, the first lieutenant. A company commander should be a captain. Of course, our guys always wound up just being first lieutenants, so Clark turned his aide and took his captain bars off and pinned them on Gandy. We thought, oh boy, this is good. And we had a number of company commanders then who became captains. And the 23rd of August, we went into combat about dusk. We came pulled up in this little town. We were in a villa. We had our CP. It was real quiet the first night there. And they give you a password and a countersign you give. If you meet somebody in the dark, you give him this, and he answers. We were about 15 yards from the Arnold River down there. And you're very careful at night. You don't move around making noise, and you don't light cigarettes. The Germans, they see little any lights you see, you may bring artillery or mortars down on you. So the second night, one of the guys we were attached to, the 1st Army Division, they had fought in North Africa. They were a tank unit. He went out to go to the latrine. That latrine is the bathroom the Army uses. They call it, well, you eat the mess hall, then you go to the bathroom, they call it a latrine. I never could figure that out. And he went out to go to the latrine, and one of our guys on guard there, he asked him the password. And the guy said, oh, they've been up there and they're used to it. They had told us, well, these Germans, they get in our uniforms. Some of them had gotten some of our company chow lines and they could speak English. And your first time, all these guys, you can be 19, 20 years old, and you can get kind of nervous at night because the trees will run around on you, everything, lights and things. And you don't have any street signs, you know where you are. You're out there, you're out in the woods and down on the river. So he asked him a second time to count a password, and he didn't give it to him. He said, oh, take it easy, take it easy. He asked him that third time, he didn't say it, he opened up on him with M1. That's the first time I heard one of them things go off in anger. And he was only maybe from here to that wall on him, and he killed him. Now, it's not uncommon, as you might think, you shoot your own troops in the dark. It happens. It happens more than you want to think about it. But this incident almost set off, because one of the guys, sergeants, came out. You see, these units, you got to remember, this is still the time where we two armies. You got a white army and a black army here. And he came out and he says, they were hot, and they should be. And he made a statement, we didn't want them niggas up here anyway. And you can imagine what that set off. They had to get our colonel and everybody else down there to, kind of break the thing up. The Germans were only 50 yards from us. If something had gotten off there, it'd have been chaos. And we of course, we'd have taken the blame for it. They got it straightened out, and we worked together for another 3 or 4 weeks, a month or so. And, everybody, you forget these things in time, and it worked out all right. Because 1st of September, we got orders to cross the Arnold River in force and take everything. So we went across, and they dropped, you had a big cumbersome gas mask on your side. We dropped these gas, they drop your gas mask. I guess they made an agreement that you wouldn't need gas. We weren't going to gas each other. So we dropped them, and they picked them up. We went into a little town called River Frata. And I was the armor artificer. I'm responsible, I'm 19, I'm responsible for all the weapons in the company. When we were in camp, I had to account for all those weapons every night. And what they did, they had an arsenal. You didn't have your weapons stacked out in the barracks. You had one of the squad rooms, I had 3 locks I had to put on that door. I had to collect every one of them weapons and count them and sign a certificate and give it to the officer of the day. I had in a rifle company, you have 187 men and 6 officers. I had 129 M1s, 28 carbines, 12 45s, 3 light machine guns, 3 mortars, 3 sniper rifles. I knew them things by heart, and I had to account for all of them because one of them was missing, it's on me. And that's the way things were. You know, you get in a lot of situations, normal units, they didn't experience these things. But as we went into this town called River Frata, after we crossed the river, and I usually stayed, there's a group in the company which is company headquarters. You have control of things, send messages back, and you have a radio and these things. And you're usually traveling with the captain. And we barely got our nose in this door because we were coming so fast on the Germans, we could hear they had 88s. You did these 88s going off when they started going off, and then we could hear them coming in. And we ran up in this town, we got in there so fast, and we were in about 15 minutes, and we had 24 men go down. And that's the first time you begin to realize, hey, this is serious, you know, and you want to get out of this thing, you know, when you're 19, 20 years old, you know, this ain't as easy as you thought. It's not like the movies. Well, we got through that. We lost our regiment exec in that town, and we lost a number of people. And that's the first time you begin to find out about casualties in war. But these are some of the things that made it difficult. People don't realize if the United States really fought with one arm behind their back in World War II, they didn't really make good use of all the manpower they had was available to them. And they paid. That's one big thing we had, a lot of people don't realize. We had production capacity. We could produce more than anybody else. But they didn't make good the truth. Until 1948, when Truman became president, and I have a copy of here, Executive Order 8892, I believe it is, that desegregated the military. Truman did it with really no political advantage to him to do it. In fact, it hurt him. That split the Democratic Party in that time, and he could have lost the election. But Truman did 3 great things people don't realize. First thing he did, he dropped the atomic bomb. Because he hadn't dropped that, we'd probably fought a lot longer. Because we had gotten word when World War II ended, we were in a little town in Italy in May, I think around the 8th of May when he dropped that. The bomb wasn't dropped to August. But the Italians kept telling us, la guerra finita, the war is over. What are you talking about? They always knew things before we did. They could tell we get ready to have an attack. They'd come tell you, you know, you get because you'd be sitting on a hill and the Germans on the other hill, and they got you down there plowing between you. See, they go back and forth between sides. They knew everything that was going on. And we're sitting up there, you know, and you sitting there sitting there watching each other. You might sit there 2 or 3 days just looking at each other in a bush. And that's better than that than moving against each other. Because what happens, the thing you dislike when they had, when Red Cross would come up, they come up there and they bring these donuts and coffee. Well, you knew right then you were in trouble. Because something bad was going to happen when you got these donuts, they get that nice to you. And they would take you a place, they have what they call a line of departure. You'd go up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on a hill, And Italy is an ideal defensive place. You're always looking up at somebody. You're always going up a hill. They take you up there and you spread out down this hill and you go to sleep. And these shells are just flying over top of you. Sky just lit up with them. Then about 4 o'clock in the morning, you get ready to move. You have what they call the line of departure, the LD. You go across the LD and you grab your stuff and get ready to go. And as they raise, they have to fire the shells a little further then because you're coming. Well, the Germans, they know that. They've been going through this for I don't know how long. They know you're coming. And what happened in Italy a lot of times, we ran upon some guys, they had some Albanians. And they would chain these guys to the gun. So they couldn't run off. We captured a couple like that. They were chained to the gun. And as the shells would step back further, they'd been dug in place. They'd come up and they'd ready to fire. And it gets pretty deadly. And it goes back and forth like that, but they were retreating all along. We took a couple prisoners there and brought them back. In fact, we had to give up the ground later on, just didn't have, pretty much run out of ammunition. But, you know, you wonder about them after they happen. And you look around, you see guys that you'd been with maybe a year or two, and, you know, they aren't there. You know, it kind of bothers you, and you hope next time you be you. One thing you hope, you know, you're sorry it's him, but you're glad it's not you. But when the war was over, it came and we were in this town. We lost, I know the last day, before we got word the war was over, I had a company barber, a guy named Peter Sherman. And he hit a booby trap in the railroad station we were near and blew up. And then the war, when the thing came in Japan, before the atomic bomb was dropped, they had told us that we were going to come back to the States and parade in New York, Armistice Day. Then they said we were going to Japan to fight. We had, this is a list you can look at. This is a list of our casualties. We had 3,000 casualties in Italy. Nobody even knows we fought there. Christmas 1944, during times of the Battle of the Bulge, everybody was fighting that night from Christmas to early December. We were in a town called Saravesa up in there, way up in the mountains. I went back there in 2000. I wondered how in the hell we got up that place. And there was a platoon, we had a forward observer there, John Fox. And the place was being overrun by the Germans. And he called for our own artillery to fire on them. And the battery told me, he said, no, that's your position. Well, Fox told him, there's more of them than there is of us. He said, bring it on. And he fired the thing. Of course, Fox didn't survive it. And he also lost two 40-man platoons he took out with him. And we had gone back there, and it took us 50 years to get Fox a Medal of Honor, which first they gave him his Distinguished Service Cross. And when Clinton was president, two of our guys, John Fox and another one, Vernon Baker, here's an article on him in a book. No Negroes won the Medal of Honor during World War II. Of all the people, all the places they fought at, none of them ever won, was even recommended for the Medal of Honor. But we finally got after, and see, to get a Medal of Honor, you have to have a lot of documentation. They just don't give you that because you look pretty or something. You got to have a documentation, what happened, what you did, and what happened, what brought this on. And we finally got, there's 6 guys who had gotten lesser medals, the Silver Star or Distinguished Service Cross. They upgraded them to the Medal of Honor. They didn't do that. This just wasn't for the blacks. They do that for basically all. The Army does that after the wars to make sure they didn't overlook anybody. Because they can get political just like anything else. General MacArthur, they gave him a Medal of Honor And they wanted to give Skinny Wainwright, who had been left on Bataan, been a Japanese prisoner 5 years. MacArthur turned it down. You know, he's a theater commander. He turned him down. But getting back to what Truman did, he dropped that atomic bomb, which was one of the most important things that happened in the world. Number two, he desegregated the military in 1948 when he was running for president. And he had to deal with Strom Thurmond then, who left the Democratic Party then. That's when they had the Dixiecrats. But Truman still won, because Truman said he did it because it was right. And third big thing he did, he fired Douglas MacArthur. MacArthur was one of the guys basically who was against desegregating the military. And he was commanding and running the Korean War for Japan. MacArthur never went to Japan. And one of his underlings was Edward Almond. Almond had been commander of the 92nd Division. And he wasn't a happy warrior with us, and we weren't with him. We had a lot of problems with Almond. And one of the statements he had made, they sent an all-Negro infantry regiment, 366, which had been in Italy sometime, guarding Air Force. And Almond told me, okay, I didn't ask for you, and I didn't want you. But I'm gonna see you get your casualties. And he did. He decimated the regiment. And he did the same thing in Japan. People don't realize it was a Puerto Rican regiment, the 65th. He pretty much did that. The one thing the guy said about Almond, you can always depend on. When you need to be aggressive, he was aggressive. When you need to be passive, he was aggressive. He always wanted to fight with somebody else's body. And he was the one that had the problem with the retreat from the Chozine Reservoir. He and Walton Walker and MacArthur. And they could not really move the desegregation army until MacArthur was removed. And Matthew Ridgway went to Korea. And that's when they the army began to look like the general population of America. Now we have a army where everybody it's based on merit. Everybody has a chance to obtain based on what you can do on your ability. Does anyone have any questions they want to? Yeah.
Did you go to Korea?
I was in the Ohio National Guard at the time when I came out of the Army. I'd gotten the commission. I was in the Guard. And I stayed in the Guard up until 52. And I developed asthma. I couldn't run. But I resigned my commission because I couldn't function. Because I had 2 kids and at that time and a wife. By the way, my wife is there with me now. We've been married since 1952. We'll make it to this June 21st, it'll be 58 years. So, and I stayed in the Army until, there's a lot of good things I liked about the Army. One thing the Army will do, it'll teach you about discipline. It'll teach you about doing things you don't like. It'll teach you about personal hygiene. It'll teach you how to organize a plan and how to plot it and carry it out. I think some of the problem we have among our youth now, if they still had universal military training, we might reduce some of those. Because when a guy is 18 to 20 years old, you know, you think you can do anything. You're made out of iron, you think. And you need some direction. Now, it's not going to do everything, but the military will give you some direction.
How many commendations or decorations did your unit receive? Do you know that?
How many commendations and decorations?
That wasn't a thing to do, the Negro units in World War II. I was in the 3rd Battalion of 370. We were the first black unit to go into ground combat in World War II. We didn't get the unit commendation. What we did, one thing we did, nice thing, we produced 2 United States senators. Eddie Brooke of Massachusetts, who served with us, and Daniel Inouye of Hawaii. We produced the first black general to command a division in the field, Fred Davidson. He fought in Korea. He became a major general. There's a full general from Lorraine, Johnny Wilson. I don't know if any of you know him. Johnny Wilson wore 4 stars. He was the deputy chief of staff logistics. He moved all that stuff when we first went to the first Gulf War. Johnny Wilson did that. He was from Lorraine, Ohio. I think they named a school or something after him there. But there's been a number of black generals other than Colin Powell. And
Yes, sir.
Sir, would you describe the circumstances surrounding those photographs on the table with Nancy Pelosi and Colin Powell?
Yeah.
23rd
23rd of July, 2008 was the 60th anniversary of Truman's desegregation order. Here it is here. House Bill 377. And that was, the reason I remember it, because that was my oldest brother's birthday, 23rd of July. I was chosen, me and this fellow here, Spencer Moore. He is in New Jersey. We represented the division at the, still down in the Rotunda. This is a great honor. Rotunda of the Capitol. This is where George Washington spoke from, Abraham Lincoln. When you see those bodies when people are, that's where they lay them out in that rotunda. I wish I had brought the C-SPAN clipping. I might have had a chance to show it to you, but it's a very impressive ceremony. They have the troops, color guard come in to post the colors. And all those guys look like they're about 6 foot tall, 6'6". And they're straight as an arrow. And they come in with these powdered wigs on and things. And they come in with playing these fife and drums. And then they set up the colors. And I looked out there and the room was full. And every guy in the front row, about 10 generals, and everyone had 4 stars on. And the room was packed. And they celebrated Truman's executive order. And this is a copy of I got from Nancy Pelosi. Spencer Moore and I, and she thanked me for my service. Here's one from Colin Powell. And here's Bob Gates. He's still the Secretary of the Army. He was under Secretary of the Army under Bush, and he's still Secretary of the Army. This is our Congressman, Stephanie Tubbs Jones. She died about 2 weeks after this was taken. We came home. She had an aneurysm and died. This is a ceremony we had with John Fox in Italy. We went back to Italy and they had this ceremony. And they built a monument to us. If you're ever up in Summa in northern Italy, in the Sergio Valley, they built a monument to us up there, the Buffalo Soldiers. We fought there in Christmas 1944. Some of you were opening your presents that day. We were digging in.
Is that you?
No, this is John Fox. He's the one that called for artillery down south. He's from Ohio, Cincinnati. He'd gone to Wilberforce University. And his wife came and his 2 grandchildren. She had never remarried, and she came, and we were able to upgrade his, they gave him the Distinguished Service Cross then, and we were able to upgrade the Medal of Honor. But this, one thing you find in Italy, every little hamlet or village you go into, there's always an opera house there and a cathedral church with a marble floor. And everything, if you go to Rome, it's all about religion. That's all you see. Priests and nuns and things. But it's a good experience though to go to Rome. It's kind of open. And this is a book that James McBride wrote, The Color of Water. I don't know if any of you know of him. He's quite a writer. He wrote for the Washington Post sometime. And he went to school here in Oberlin. And he wrote this novel Miracle at St. Anna's. When the Germans were retreating in Italy from northern Italy back north, the Italians would harass them. And they told them, don't arrest them, because, you know, they would retaliate. There's about 3 villages, the Germans, this is a movie, this part here is the movie version of it. They just went into town and just killed everybody. Put them out in the square. You have little squares a lot of time in Italy, a fountain around it. And they run everybody into town, this small town out, and just sprayed them. In fact, when I was in Italy, we went there July 4th, '07, to make an announcement about the film. And there were 3 of the Germans who had taken part in these massacres were on trial. Just like someone like Demjanjuk here, but they were putting them on trial there in Italy. You find in Italy and France sometimes, even now, they have these trials for people who corroborated or, you know, took part in massacres.
We got a question right over here.
Did your kids join the military?
Huh?
Did your kids join the military?
My son's in there now. He was to come down, but he didn't get off. He was coming down. He's been there about 22 years. He's in the reserve. He's in an outfit out of Columbus. I have no qualms against the military. I believe it. I think people learn a lot in the military. One thing you can learn, you can make a living, and you can build up a retirement, and you can get medical benefits. 2 or 3 years ago, they paid them $15,000 to re-enlist. Some guys can get up to $40,000 re-enlist. Now, where can a kid get that kind of money out here? And just being in the reserve, you come out there and you get a pension. You can travel on military airplanes or boats or whatever they are with the space available. You can go anywhere you want in the world. See, a lot of kids look down on the military. We're building a big VA hospital up there in Cleveland. Big place. Oh, they've doubled that place to take care of these veterans. A lot of kids turn their nose, look down on it, but there's a lot of things, and people don't realize the things the military has done for this country.
Yes, sir.
When did the 92nd Division actually pick up the name Buffalo Division? We know the history, and you mentioned that the Indians named...
First World War. That's when division. We didn't actually have a national army until the First World War. We had a lot of state units. And then they gave all state units national, federal designations. Made them reserve, you know, made them federal. The first divisions, they had divisions laid out up to 100. The first 27 divisions were reserved for the regular army. 27 to 50 reserved for the reserves. No, they reserved for the National Guard. That's Ohio was the 37th Division. Pennsylvania was 28. Then above 50, they went to the reserves. Of course, when World War II started, they enlarged that. We went into the larger, and then some of the divisions got a lot of publicity. They kept them on the Army roster, like 101st Airborne. They got all that publicity at Bastogne. People think they're the only ones who were there. 82nd is still considered the elite division in the Army, the Airborne. They were converted to Airborne Division, and they're still on the rest of the roster. The trouble our gripe was, when they desegregated, they wiped the Negro units out. The 24th and 25th were gone. All those records and battle streamers they had won in the Indian during the Plains Wars, they're, you know, just put in mothballs.
Well, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
It's distinct, and the Plains Wars is very distinct.
Yeah.
But I wondered how it happened to you folks.
After each war, they deactivate units. They seal your battles. You see, every time you go and have a campaign or a battle, they name it, and you get a streamer to go on your guide arm. That's on there eternally. Then they seal them in air. They got some airtight things. They seal them in. I don't know where they keep them, in the Pentagon or they might keep them at at the station where you were a home station. We were formed at Fort McClellan. They were talking about closing McClellan a few years ago, and we asked to have our colors moved from McClellan to Fort Huachuca. We didn't want to have our stuff stacked at McClellan. We didn't want it in Alabama. I think you can understand why. And they did it. I mean, we have Huachuca is a very historical place. Right now, Huachuca is the center for communications for all the military. The guy, we used to have a Pearl Harbor Day dinner every year. And we would always get a minority flag officer. About 20 years we did that. One year we got a guy Short. He was Lieutenant General. He was commander of Huachuca. He said they can get a message anywhere we got a facility, anywhere in the world, get a message to them in 6 seconds. He said Pearl Harbor couldn't have, there's no excuse, it couldn't happen today because they can get a message there. And Huachuca is a beautiful place now. I've been out there a couple of times. You know, when I first went to Huachuca and you couldn't get a pass, I had 2 aunts living in Tucson. 3 aunts, really. They had been there since the 20s. They are related to Woody Strode, the actor. My mother's maiden name was Strode. And I couldn't go to Tucson to visit her. Couldn't get a special pass. Couldn't get nothing. And every time I got a pass, you had to go to Mexico.
Yes, sir?
Sir, facing all this segregation, this maltreatment, why didn't you take an administrative discharge? What is it that keeps you going under such circumstances?
Administrative discharge, what's that? You mean the guardhouse? No, you know, I think you always think things are going to improve. This isn't right. And you can't understand why they don't understand that, some of the things that they're doing. It's difficult to understand, you know, what are they thinking? I don't understand, I don't know your opinion on these things, like this health bill. If people don't have health insurance, why can't they figure out some way to make it so it includes everybody? Why is there a fight they'd rather wreck the country than give us health? They're gonna pay for it some way, whether the people go in emergency on Saturday night or what. Why can't that be worked out? But no, most of the guys never thought they weren't happy with a lot of things that were going on. But we didn't have any deserters, anything like that, and nobody going out there and surrender. You don't get out there and surrender on nobody. The people who were captured, like when the war was over, Germans would line up in formation. They'd come down the road singing. What happens is they break their rifle butts off and come down in and surrender the unit. You can do that, but you can't go out there and get up here and say, I quit while was going on there. People don't like that. You know, you don't want to be, you got to feed this prisoner, but you got to take him back somewhere, and everybody's mad at him anyway. You shot somebody I know, and you know, you don't like that. It's difficult. You know, people say, well, you know, it shouldn't be brutal, but you get out there and you see you got a buddy get shot, and you get worked up. And remember, all these guys are 18, 19, 20 years old. And you think, ain't nobody gonna know but me. But they document a lot of stuff. And in the Army, you have what they call a day report in a company. First sergeant keeps that. He writes who's sick, what the weather is, anybody's on furlough, anybody's shot. The whole thing, he keeps as much as information he can get. So it's not an abstract thing, you think. They got a record of pretty much what goes on every day, starting in the morning. The first sergeant has to keep the day report. And that goes all the way up to the battalion, up to the regiment, up to the division. They've got a whole lot of stuff on you. It's like these little tags you got on your grocery thing. You'd be surprised all the stuff. They know where you go every day. Know everything on you. Know what underwear you put on in the morning. You know, people got more information on you now than you can shake a stick at. Yeah.
Tell us about your career after you left the service. What did you do?
I went to school. I'm a Buckeye.
On the GI Bill?
Yeah. It wasn't easy down there either. You know, when I went there, you hear about Jesse Owens, you know, and people, Hitler snubbing Jesse. Jesse couldn't get a room in the dormitories because of race. And he was the best athlete in the world. He couldn't even get in the dormitories, and they worried about Hitler snubbing him. Now, what the hell he care about Hitler not speaking to him? You know, and I think he'd much rather have stayed in the dormitories. When I went there, his daughter, I think she was made homecoming queen. That was a big thing. And they have a track down there now, the Jesse Owens track. And people tell you about nothing has changed in this country, not better. They've changed a lot. They might not be everything you like, but they've changed a whole lot. But I had a job when I finished Ohio State. I went to apply for a job. Offered to work for a guy 2 weeks free. And I had a couple other jobs. And, you know, just finally, I got a job at the Cleveland School Board working for the architect. And the way I got that job, I went in there and I saw an ad in the paper and I applied one day. So he told Perry, you know, I applied for this job. And Perry called, I guess he talked to me, I don't know what he did anyway. I got a call that Friday night. I come to work Monday morning. And I came to work, worked there 30 years. And I retired. I went through all the federal school suits. And when I left there, I finally retired. I was scared to look at my mailbox. Every other day I was getting a subpoena about something. I got more subpoenas. That was before shredders. And you know, the last 5 years that I look back now, we had 173,000 children in the Cleveland school system then. Today they claim they have 40,000. That's 2/3 of the kids gone. And they still ain't got no money. You know, and I just wonder about just like the war. When I went back to Italy in 2007, I was telling what's going on. We were driving past the the cemetery in Florence. When you see the American cemeteries in Normandy or Italy or someplace, you look down those rows, those crosses, I don't care which way you look, those things are exact, a perfect line. And the grass looks like carpeting. And I stood there and I cried. I knew some of them people, and I thought, you know, what the hell were we fighting about? Now all them guys are gone, and 20 years later we're going through the same thing. And 20 years now we're doing the same thing. And I don't know how we got into Afghanistan or how we're going to get out. Russia could walk across the border and whip them, and they couldn't do it. Nobody has whipped Afghanistan since way back. I remember the old movie Gonga Din. You used to read about the Khyber Pass and all those things. Ain't nobody who can whip. One thing, you get in a lot of these countries, they just aren't organized for you to whip them. You think you never can bring on the bear all this firepower you got, you can't bring it to bear on them because they have no organization. You don't know who to shoot. So what do? But I wonder how in the hell they gonna get out of Afghanistan with honor. So they always come about getting out with honor. Like it did in Vietnam, I guess. Well, we won, we go home. Because one thing pretty soon, if they continue these things, we gonna run out of army. They're going to go have to institute a draft or something. You know, I don't know how they're going to do that. You're talking about quitting. It was about quitting. That's when the time you'd have probably a lot of guys going to Canada again. But most people, I guess you'd have a hard time justifying going to Afghanistan to fight.
What was Spike Lee like?
Oh, he's nice. I saw him. We were sitting there, my wife and I, in the home. I tell you one thing. Them guys put you up nice. You travel first class. Set up them big seats in the airplane there, and you're right back. In that first class, you can swivel around the seat. I had breakfast. We had breakfast there in New York one time. Oh, it's $52 a breakfast. Scrambled eggs, bacon and stuff. And the guy mistakenly put it on my credit card. I called the McBride and said, you know, I got this bill. What am I supposed to do with this? He said, what? He said, you just send me that thing. He took care of it. We went to the premiere of that movie. They put me up in a hotel room. It was on the 43rd floor. I couldn't even see the street. And they take you in there, they put you in limousines. That's all they do, drive around these big black Lincoln limousines or Mercedes, all of them black. And they sent them, where the hell when the premiere was right across the street from the hotel we staying in. They sent a limousine over there to take me across the street. And it's nice. And people talk about money, you know. We like traveling like that. I got a couple of nice trips. I got to go to California. I have a niece as a councilman out there. And she wanted me to come out there because, let's see, I had a picture, I think, a lot of the Japanese guys that fought with us. No, a lot of the Japanese veterans were out there. Went out there and I saw them. And I've had some other good experiences. This is a book, Maggie Morehouse. She teaches at University of South Carolina. She wrote a book. Her father served with the 93rd. And there's another one, Carolyn Johnson, who teaches at Eckerd College in Florida. Her father, they were white. They served with the 92nd. All white officers weren't bad. Don't believe that. You had some, we had one very good one, trying to think a minute. General McCaffrey, the drug czar. His father was the chief of staff, and Lieutenant Colonel was chief of staff. He used to come to our meetings. He joined the and General Almond, this is irony, his grandson came to our association and joined. He has a Korean wife. I say Almond had better fit now, he knew that. But we've been meeting in Washington. See, persistence pays off. Ever since '55, we've been going to Washington, harassing the government as much as we can. It took us that long to get these two guys recognized for the Medal of Honor. See, so it's not easy, or it wasn't something that was done easy. You know, it may look it once it happened, but it wasn't a happy day. And to see the Army now, response, and I really felt good when I stood there in the Capitol Rotunda. And I told them about what they did to us at Huachuca. I wanted them to know. And I let them know we weren't happy with it. You know, I didn't want to rub your nose in, but we weren't happy. And we overcame that. And a lot of things you do, you wonder the reasoning why we do them to each other for no reason at all. And that's something you think about as you go along. You know, why can't we try to solve a problem, really try to make it difficult for the other guy? Because when you make it difficult, he's going to try to find some way to retaliate. Then you will go back. Just like you see those guys on the basketball floor. The other day, the guy got up, and who was the guy? I forgot to tell you. He bumped into the guy. when he bumped him, he pushed him. Then all of a sudden the bench cleared, all 10 of them, and nobody knows what they're doing, all of them out there, and them are big guys. And they hit you, you're hurt. But that's what happens. Guys, if a guy pushed for no reason at all, just because you pushed me.
Thanks, Mr. Perry.